In 2016, over 4.5 million people in the state of Missouri voted in the presidential election. Around 20% of those voters are between the ages of 18 and 29. On this episode of Roundtable, we will examine three sides of the upcoming presidential election. We invited a college-age registered Democrat, Republican, and independent voter onto the show. Today we'll hear some of the reasons on why these students believe their selected candidate will be a solid fit for the position of Commander-in-Chief. I'm JD Wessel, and you're watching Roundtable here on KNWT, Channel 8. Election Day is 1 week away. Although many people across the nation have already sent in their ballots, we invited some Northwest students on our program to give their input on who they voted for and why they believe their candidate is fit for presidency. We start with a Biden supporter from rural Missouri.
My name is Tyler Bears. I am a senior here at Northwest Missouri State University. I'm a political science major with an emphasis in global affairs, and I am the president of the College Democrats. Joe Biden is currently running on one of the most progressive environmental policies that the world has ever seen. That is something that not only the US needs, but the world needs it. Climate change is threatening all of humanity, right? If we don't do something about it within the next 12 years, we are likely to face an extinction level event. I don't know about y'all, but personally, I would like to avoid that, if at all possible. Another thing that I think makes Joe Biden a qualified leader is his COVID mask mandate. Over 200,000 Americans are dead right now. A mask mandate needs to be in place desperately. So many things have been neglected in this country, and I think that with Joe Biden bringing and drawing attention to those issues, I think that's what makes him a good leader. His decision-making makes him qualified to be a leader.
So my name's Savannah Baker. I am currently a senior here studying emergency disaster management and geographic information science. So short terms, maps, and disasters. In terms of politics, even though I'm not a political science major, I love government, I love that process. And I'm currently the vice president of College Republicans, and so I try to stay as active as I can in that. I see Donald Trump as a good fit for the next 4 years, first of all, because of campaign promises. Typically with politicians during the campaign years, you see them making a lot of promises to sway voters this way or that way. And when they actually get into office, it's hard to see them actually implement those practices. Whereas with Donald Trump, he's not your traditional candidate, he's not your traditional politician, but he has made a lot of things happen that he promised. Policy-wise, I really appreciate his business perspective. We have seen a positive impact in terms of taxes and that sort of thing. My dad is actually an accountant, and so my family has a CPA firm, and they have seen kind of the effect of that as well. And then I really appreciate his involvement and pushing those campaign promises. I know healthcare is a big topic, but I know for me and my family, we've had trouble with the ACA and getting actual healthcare that doesn't cost over $2,500 a month. So he has worked to kind of reevaluate and kind of shift it towards something that would work towards the smaller working class.
Hi, my name is Spencer Owens. I am a senior political science with an emphasis in public admin major here at Northwest Missouri State. And my current political governmental role is I'm an assistant to the city administrator in Lawson, Missouri, and I function as the policy analyst for Representative Randy Railsback, who's the state rep from the Missouri 8th State Rep District. So as an independent currently, I see both positives and negatives from both Republicans and Democrats. With Democrats, I really like, I enjoy where they're wanting to spend their money. I like the idea of spending more money to have a more well-rounded healthcare system, have a fully funded public education system nationwide, and to have a better infrastructure program. However, where I agree more with the Republicans is I feel like they better know how to manage the money. Democrats, I really enjoy where they're going to spend it, but I feel like sometimes they don't have the money to spend. where I feel as that Republicans focus more on a balanced budget, focus more on ensuring that we're in the positive instead of deficit spending. I think that that's important for a democracy to maintain. I grew up in a very small rural community. My political views often were greatly different from the political views of my neighbors or even my family. This is the most important election in the history of our country. Now, the biggest issue that I see is that they may be yelling about the issues, but we average Americans may not learn anything else. All we hear is the yelling. All we hear is the hate. We never actually hear or get to understand where they land on policy positions. Let the American people know who you are and what you're voting for. We're smart enough to understand the issues, and it's time that our leaders trusted us.
I'm just going to get some general questions out there for you guys, and feel free to kind of talk amongst each other and see each other's viewpoints. So Savannah, first I'll start with you on this opening question. What are some things that you see from, of course you're Republican, some good things that you see with the Republican Party, and then we'll go down the line.
For sure. So one of the things that is interesting about the Republican Party is it does advocate for economic independence and kind of independence from the government structure in itself. In the initial government documents, there was that idealized kind of let the government support the people, and that has kind of continued with the tradition. Obviously, modernization has kind of changed it, but it has kept that ideal. In addition to the role of kind of faith and moral backgrounds into politics and kind of governing and providing our pathway as well.
There's two things that I really like about the Democratic Party. The first thing is almost, in a way, something that's beautiful about the Democratic Party, but also its downfall, and it's the fact that we care about so many issues. And oftentimes, while I think that it's important that we care about a lot of issues, I think that oftentimes it creates almost a litmus test within the party. But I think that it's fantastic that so many people can come together and care about so many issues. But then the other thing that I really like about the Democratic Party, and this is something that really strikes quite close to home, is that it's a party about uplifting the impoverished and the downtrodden. And it tries to empower the voices that are often left out of the conversation.
A lot of voters out there across the country and across Missouri and even here at Northwest Missouri State who feel sort of lost between the two major parties right now. They may see themselves leaning one way as far as their party structure, but then they look at the two current standard bearers of the party and think, well, I may think of myself like this, but how could I be a this if this is who I have to support or vote for? And I think Tyler mentions an interesting topic when he talks about the litmus test. And I don't only think that that is a problem with the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party as well. I think you see both parties increasingly becoming more selective about sort of what generates or what constitutes a true Democrat or a true Republican. And I think a lot of folks try to get themselves caught in the middle and think, well, sure, I may agree with the Democrats on this, this, and this, but I think the Republicans are right when it comes to these other issues.
Do you guys see any things that you like from either the Democratic side or Republican side?
So I think definitely, me with my background in emergency management, we have just a desire to help people. So I can definitely vouch for the kind of heart and empathy of it all. It's just the application that we disagree on.
I have thought about this a lot, and I think that many Republican voters are good people, and I think that they truly do want what is best for America. Unfortunately, though, I don't know that that is so reflected in the elected Republican officials. So something that I like about the Republican Party, I think, are the voters. But as far as policy, I hate to sound cold-hearted, but I don't know that there is a policy that I can necessarily get behind.
You're correct when you say the divide has never been worse than it is today. And I think that's why so many people like me became disenfranchised with the party they were currently in, but knew that they didn't have a home in the other party, which is exactly what happened to me. I knew when I left one of the two parties. I won't say which one on here. But when I left, I knew that my home was not in the other one. I think that there are areas still where we can make progress. I mean, I think infrastructure is a great area where I think we all need roads to drive on. We all need bridges to get across. We all want to protect our national parks. You know, there are areas that really don't have to be political. You know, I would like to think public education could be one of those. It has not been in the past couple of years, especially in the state of Missouri. We see a lot of infighting between the parties about that. But I would like to see that become a new idea where we can get back on board with some of these bipartisan approaches, because I do think there are good things and bad about both parties.
I agree that I wish that certain things wouldn't be so political, such as infrastructure and public education. However, I think that it's interesting because Republicans, every single time, as soon as they get elected into office, the first thing they go after is public education. But then shortly after that, they say, okay, we're gonna go and cut more taxes, and our roads are suffering. Our entire infrastructure is suffering because of that, especially in the state of Missouri, where we have some of the lowest taxes in the nation. We're soon to be one of the poorest states in the entire union. So, I mean, do you see, because you've worked with those people down there. Because the idea is that if we cut taxes on these huge corporations that are just making tons of money, billions of dollars in the state of Missouri, is that if we cut those taxes, then they'll create more jobs. But every single time, they don't. They just pocket that money. They just pocket that extra money.
And sure, so, and to elaborate, you know, of course, on what I've done so far, I have worked down in Jefferson City. I worked this past term, or this past session in Jefferson City, working for the Democratic caucus then. Now I work for the Republican state rep, Randy Railsback, working for the Republican caucus. And I have listened in on those conversations. I've sat in on the Children and Families Committee hearings in the House, as well as the public education hearings in the House. We consider the Republican Party in Missouri is the party of Trump and the party of Parson. That's how we consider it, right, in the state of Missouri. Those are your standard bearers. Those are your big dogs. However, we also have to start taking better look. I want to see committee hearing notes. Who's testifying? What are the questions being asked by those House and Senate members in the state legislature in Jeff City? What are the questions being asked in committees in D.C.? We have to start paying close enough attention and reading through this legislation, because I agree with you. A lot of Republicans do make the promise that they're going to fund public ed, and they get in there and they do the exact opposite. So is it worse to be a liar, or is it and say you're going to do it and then not, or is it worse to be a hypocrite and say that you're the party that does and then gets there and makes no effort to do it? I think both are equally bad in this scenario, and I think you find them on both sides.
Yeah. Spencer, to kind of go off your point, I will say definitely the smaller elected and legislative positions are huge. I know back home, whenever I helped campaign, we were campaigning for board positions. Local legislature makes the difference, because then that can translate, and that's where you're building up your leaders to eventually take your higher positions.
Politics affects every single facet of your life, no matter who you are. So staying informed is extremely important. There are a few resources that I would recommend if you're trying to get an unbiased source. The first one being mediabias.com, I believe is what it's called. And then you can type in a website, and then it'll show you like it's left to right, it's biased.
And I for sure, both of them, especially making the comment about how you need to prepare yourself as a voter today. Because I think what I would tell Northwest students, what I would tell college students across the country, and I think, I think Tyler may have mentioned this in an earlier segment, it is incredibly important for college students to vote. College students and young people in general have the power to change the world every election year. There are so many of you, and so many that never vote, that haven't ever voted in their lives. And if you took the time, take the 10 minutes, go vote for Donald Trump, go vote for Joe Biden. Go cast your vote and let it be known that you are a participant in this civil society. Don't stand by. Don't be the person who watches while decisions get made. Make your voice heard, because once you do that, then you can complain as much as you want. You can talk about just how bad Joe Biden and Donald Trump really are, because you know why? Because you went and voted.
One thing I will add, I know we talked about it a little bit, it just came to mind. Vote for the local stuff. It may seem like your city councilman, city councilwoman, these quote unquote little things don't make a difference. They do. And I know I'm not a Missouri resident, so I'm not as familiar with some of the policies as Spencer and Tyler are, but I know there are certain amendments that are being proposed. They seem confusing, so read up on them. Make sure you truly understand it so you know what you're voting for. So find kind of those opinions, find what your goals are, find where you kind of align yourself. For me, it just happens to be the Republican Party because of my faith, because of my family's background, and because of where my ideals lie.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd, and we've pulled together 3 different polling websites that you can follow for some predicted forecasts of the elections. These are just a few sites voters can visit to see how a candidate could win the national election, yet these are still considered educated guesses. As always, signing off for Roundtable, I'm JD Wessel. Have a pleasant evening.